Hey everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. I am Coding Bug and in this tutorial I'll show you how to create a stylish input text field using HTML and CSS. So let's get started. Here we have a div element with the class attribute set to container. Next, we have another div element with the class attribute set to from. Next, we have a div element with the class attribute set to input box. And here we have an input element with the type attribute set to text. Next, we have a span element that contains the text full name. This is typically used to display placeholder text. Next, we have an I element that can be targeted and styled using CSS. Now let's add CSS. Here we have a universal selector. We set the margin and the padding to 0. Box sizing is set to border box and the font family is set to sans serif. Now let's tell the container element. Here width is set to 100%, mean height is set to 100 ph, display is set to flex, justify content and align item is set to center, so that you center the vertically and horizontally, and background is set to linear gradient color. Here it creates a diagonal gradient color with a 45-degree angle. Now let's style the from element. Here position is set to relative. Padding is set to 50 pixels, so that it creates a space between the from. Background is set to white. Display is set to flex. Flex direction is set to column. Justify content and align item is set to center, so that it center the flex item vertically and horizontally. Gap is set to 25 pixels, so that it add a gap between the flex item. Border radius is set to 8 pixels, so that it applies a rounded corner, and here we have a box shadow. It provides a shadow effect for the tag. Now let's style the input box container. Here position is set to relative, width is set to 350 pixels for the input box. Now let's style the input element. Here position is set to relative. Padding is set to 8 pixels and 10 pixels. Width is set to 100%. Border is set to none. Border radius is set to 6 pixels, so the rounded corner of the input field. Outline is set to none, so that remove the default focus outline. And background is set to transparent. Text color is set to white. Font size is set to 1.25 rem. Letter spacing is set to 0.05 rem, so that it adds a slight letter spacing. Z index is set to 2 and the cursor is set to pointer. Now let's style the placeholder text. Here position is set to absolute. Left is set to 0. Padding is set to 10 pixels and 0. Pointer event is set to none. Font size is set to 1 rem. Letter spacing is set to 0.05 rem, so they add a slight letter spacing. Color is set to grayish color, and here we added transition of 0.5 seconds, so they add a smooth transition. Now let's style the label when the input is valid or focused. Here font size is set to 0.85 rem. It reduces the font size of the label, and the transform is set to translate y minus 32 pixels, so that it moves the label up to 32 pixels. Now let's style the eye element. Here position is set to absolute, bottom is set to 0, left is set to 0, width is set to 100%, so that it makes the entire span of the width input box. Border radius is set to 1.5 pixel, so they add a slight rounding to the corner, and the background is set to a linear gradient with a 45-degree angle. And transition is set to 0.5 seconds, so that it adds a smooth transition. Z index is set to 1, and pointer event is set to none, so they prevent the line from interfering with Mauser events. Now let's style the decorative line when the input is valid or focused. Here height is set to 100%, so it make it fully visible. Border radius is set to 6 pixels, and here we apply a box shadow to the line when the input is focused, creating a shadow effect. So that's it for today's video. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more web development tutorials. Thank you.